Whatever your goals and objectives are for gathering your herd, GKIC's latest Dan Kennedy program is going to be your go-to handbook to get them there. Event hacks. Fill, market, and monetize every time. Leverage the exact strategies, promotions, secrets, tools, and templates lifted right out of today's most successful events. Copy the marketing models and proof-boosting strategies that produce big league 5, 6, even 7-figure event revenues. Event hacks contain the keys to the kingdom when it comes to planning, filling, and monetizing a powerhouse event. Here is your golden opportunity to go backstage months and months before the first speaker steps on stage. Experience a deeper and clearer understanding of the way this business works. You'll be armed with strategies, blueprints, and marketing examples for maximizing every single piece of your event pie. No fluff, no filler. It's your fast track to achieving high ROI from events, whether you're a newbie or a veteran event host. This course contains a core Dan Kennedy program, complete with action plans and budget worksheet. You'll also get 5 supplemental booster trainings to cover absolutely every conceivable aspect of this complex industry. On this first DVD, you'll discover the chief reasons why having events can benefit you and your business. And they're not just limited to bottom-line numbers. You'll also learn how to think strategically about your events and why taking the long view is so important. And finally, you'll find out how our shrinking world and globalization affects event planning today and into the future. And now, GKIC is very pleased to bring you Dan Kennedy on planning highly profitable and successful events.
Well, so when you think about events for the info marketing business, and actually for other types of businesses as well, there's a broad variety. You know, there's single day, multi-day, there's local, there's regional, there's national, there's global in terms of draw of audience and intent of draw of audience. There's training and education and information driven events. There are more entertainment, fraternity, and sometimes destination-driven events. There are sales events where their primary purpose, whether disclosed and overt or somewhat disguised and not overt, but their purpose is to sell things. And the reasons to have them, first of all, are that nothing quite substitutes for a physical gathering of people inside 4 walls in terms of influence, impact, retention, ascending people, increasing their commitment to the entity. There's a reason that every effort is made to get people to come to church and to do so every 7 days. It has not been abandoned, even though obviously the technology exists. You can make a case, just as people will make a case that why do we even need mail? Why doesn't everybody just use email? So you could make a case, why do we need a church building anywhere? All we need is what we're doing here. We need the pastor in front of a camera and an internet hookup, and everybody can stay home. And they can complete their church service on Sunday, and they can get to the golf course or the buffet or the Bob Evans even faster. The problem is, amongst other things, that the money won't flow. And so, yes, there is televangelism. Yes, there are ministries that only operate at a distance. But if you examine the numbers they have to reach in order to sustain themselves versus 200, 300, 400, 500 people supporting a church, it tells you a lot. So I say that for most businesses, most info marketing businesses, you really can't eliminate the church because it is the fellowship of the people that matter. In the network marketing industry, there's been two little waves, one recent, one not all that recent, where companies thought it would be a very cool idea to eliminate the meetings and do everything at a distance and do everything digitally and use Skype and go to meetings and all of that as a substitute for this kind of messy process of organizing Tuesday night meetings in living rooms all across the world and doing those every week and moving people to monthly rallies at the Holiday Inn by the freeway in cities all across America, and then quarterly bigger regional meetings at convention centers. And why don't we eliminate all that? And in both attempts, some companies virtually put themselves out of business, and others discovered, somewhat to their dismay, that the business is the meetings because of the fellowship of the people. One type of event is some version of a fast start meeting, and in our world it's very beneficial to get new people, new to you, into a physical environment with other people as quickly as possible, because until that happens, so in our world in GKIC, we have fast start boot camps, we have the super conference, has the main mixed breed of dog, everybody can come kind of event. We also have an info summit, which is more specialized. But if you think about the fast starts and you think about the super conference, first of all, if you saw our data, the attendance of one or both of those dramatically impacts long-term our retention. A person is far more likely to stay beyond a year, beyond 2 years, beyond 3 years. If you take a look at what I call lifers, people with 10 years tenure with us or more, virtually all of them attended physical events early and continue to attend physical events at least, if not every time, at least frequently. And until that happens for a new person, and they are in a room with 30 or 300 or 3,000 excited people, at least some of whom are doing something and have successes to report, to reinforce their decision. They are the only idiot in their basement at home alone. And nothing changes that but the physical event where fellowship occurs. There's also enormous benefit for both the attendee, the event attendee, and the marketer in getting people out of their daily activities and daily routines and daily pressures and daily small circle of association. If you did that to them for 3 days and didn't really do much else with them, if you could get away with it, if you just locked them in a room, took their devices away, and gave them a pad and a pencil and left them to thinking, you would deliver great value. You could have somebody sit on the stage in a chair and read Think and Grow Rich aloud, and you would do great value purely because you extracted them from what they are constantly and customarily paying attention to, which reinforces a very limited scope of thought. So when you take the dentist who goes to his office every day and he drives by the same route every day, pretty much whatever he listens to in the car on the way to the office, he listens to the same thing every day. He now checks in with the same staff. He goes to the back and works on teeth all day. 2 or 3 times a day, he has conversations, again, with the same staff. If he takes a break for lunch, he goes to lunch and meets up with the same 4 or 5 people. And he goes home at the end of the day and hangs out with the same family. That's all very reinforcing and very small. It's sort of like living in an Amish town. And so when you take him out of there and you put him in a physical space away from all of that for a day or two or three, and you surround him with other people and you expose him to other ideas, you have a very liberating effect on this guy. He's able to think about himself, his business, and the world around him in a very different way. So for all those reasons, the event part of the business, seminar, boot camp, training class, convention, big conference, all of these kinds of things make a better customer. They make a better member. So aside from the monetization of them for what they are, their impact on the long-term customer value, which for the most part in our business reflects the long-term value occurring for the customer, is all dramatically affected by the frequency of events, the variety of events, the kind of events that we do, but certainly the offering of and effectively promoting of events. So when you start to plan an event and you start to think about it first strategically, not tactically. So by that I mean tactically is who's going to speak first, second, third, what are they going to speak about? If you're going to sell, what are you going to sell? When are you going to sell it? At what price are you going to sell it? Are you going to credit the event registration back against the coaching program you're selling? Are you going to have a party? Are you going to separate the audience and have VIPs in one place? And that's all tactical stuff. So when you think about them first strategically, your enemy is confusion and your ally is clarity. So you have to start with why are we doing it? What are the purposes? And it needs to be a short list, not a long list. What are the purposes for doing this event and this particular event at this point in time? And so I say a short list because it's hard for any servant to effectively serve more than one master. If you've ever in business had three people try and share a single assistant, you find more often than not that doesn't work out very well. So the same thing's true with any servant. And an event now is a servant to a master or masters. So if you have 8, 10, 12 objectives, and probably none of them are going to be served very well. I would put sort of the magic number at 5 or less, and ideally 3. So you have to think through what your chief purposes for doing the event are, and then you reverse engineer everything. And everything is litmus tested to, does this actually advance one of these objectives? Is it neutral? Or is it in any way a distraction or harmful? So you may, for example, have a great relationship with a particular speaker. The speaker does a fabulous job, and everybody loves them. And they always get a standing ovation. However, if what they speak about, or what they sell when they speak, if they sell, does not advance the cause of the moment, does not move the purposes of the event forward, you can't have that person on that agenda at that event. And you have to view everything you do putting together an event exactly the same way. Likes, dislikes, preferences, obligations, none of that matters. Everything is driven by your 2 or 3 or 4 key purposes. And that's really the most important strategic thing to do. I suppose the second most important is there's no point in building an event, no matter how well it would serve your particular purposes, if it can't be effectively sold. As much as we might think women's volleyball is a great idea, if we own NBC or ABC or CBS, we're probably not going to televise a women's volleyball. We're definitely not going to televise it opposite Sunday night football because we're going to get killed. So event programming is in a sense like media programming. There has to be an audience. The audience has to be the audience we want for our purposes, and the audience has to be available. The audience has to be excited by what this event that we intend to do is. They have to be willing to pay for it. They have to be willing to travel to come to it if it's not local. If it's local, they have to be willing to leave their home or office, sacrifice a Saturday, whatever it is, to come to it. So the second strategic thing is really market-driven. Are we building the most saleable event that we can build? So I'd say those are the two most important things to get clarity about when you set out to do an event. By the way, most people do the approach is exact opposite, as they do with business in general. So most people create the product and then they go in search of a hoped for market that will support that product. And they typically have built the product they like, the product they have the parts for, that allows them to build the product they know the most about, the product that they want to sell, with very little concern for what's the market. Same thing happens with events. The whole event is built with really very little concern for who is the audience. Whereas, this question is really about, is there an audience? Who's the audience? And if this is the audience I want, what will compel them? What will be so compelling to them that they can't ignore it, they can't devalue it, and they can't stay home? And it's important to understand, when we're bringing people to a physical event, we are asking a lot of them. And in today's world, and with certain age groups, particularly in today's world, we are asking for antithetical behavior on their part. So their normal and customary and preferred behavior is to stay home, to spend all their time, if they are in business, in their business. Otherwise, to stay home and to do everything through their device. Local is now what's in my phone, not what's in a 5-mile radius around my house, or what's in my state, or what's in my industry. Local is what's in my phone. So we are asking people to do something that is really antithetical to them in many cases. And even if it's not that, it is expensive, it's time-consuming, it's inconvenient. I fly private now, but people tell me going anywhere via the commercial air travel system is less than fun. To some people, it's disturbing. Rightly or wrongly, they feel safer in their own environment than they do in a distant city, a foreign land, a big venue. So we're asking people to do a lot. And therefore, it's not enough to have something that is beneficial, valuable, and interesting. We've got to be notches way, way, way above that. So when you think about the current and present market, for many businesses now, it is at least national, if not global. I mean, the size of our world, arguably one of the good things the internet has produced, the size of our world is, in a sense, much smaller. There was certainly a day in the event business where local and regional were very prominent. If you were doing something like an annual convention, you moved it around. You might very well do two during the course of the year, a West Coast and East Coast. You had real, if not limitations, you had real geographic concerns. And largely, if you were a US-based marketer, the majority of your audience, of your market, was US-based. That has pretty much all changed. And as a matter of fact, in most info marketing businesses, the percentage of the customer base for US-based companies that resides outside the United States has grown, is growing, and continues to grow. Maybe more significantly, differential customer value surprises a lot of people when they discover that their non-US residing customer is actually a more valuable customer, a better behaved customer, a more ardent customer than is their US-based customer. There's a variety of reasons for that. I don't know that we want to take time for them, but it is fact in more of these businesses than not. So the event business now, particularly your bigger events, your annual or biannual conference, or member convention, that kind of an event, is really for a global audience. And that requires now thinking about airport connections. How hard is it going to be for not just somebody all through the United States to get to where you're holding the event, but how many stops are there between it and Berlin? This matters. And the desirability of coming to a city may matter. It also raises issues of productization of the event, live time, live streaming, monetization of the event. In other words, do you let people partake of the event without being at it? How do you do that? When do you do that? And if so, how do you monetize it? Because you're almost always sacrificing monetization that would occur if that person were there physically. The trade-offs are significant. Perhaps we'll talk about them a little bit later. But I think the first thing to recognize is that we're in a global marketplace, most of us. We're not in a domestic marketplace. There may very well be higher valuable customers for us, non-domestic than domestic. And we have to think about how we entice and incentivize and reward the people for whom crossing some pond arduously to come to our event is in play. You know, it's a real problem for people with mastermind groups where there are 3 or 4 meetings during the course of a year. Often the U.S.-based business will have many non-U.S.-based customers eager to join those programs, but then their participation and their stick rates, their renewal rates tend not to be as good because it seemed like a really good idea to them at the time, but when they have to make 3 trips from Bangladesh and make 5 stops in each direction, in order to get to the mastermind meeting, their enthusiasm tends to wane a lot more quickly than the person who has to travel from Dallas to Cleveland. And when you have a limited number of seats in those things, you have to think about whether you want to give a seat to somebody who will be very hard to renew when you should be working harder to sell the seat to somebody who will be more likely to renew. So this global expansion is not without its issues and its challenges. But it is sort of the wave of the future. In the near term, it's where I think the best customers are overall. And when you look at our middle class issues in America, the 90% of info marketing businesses, their best customers have gray hair, which means they're getting grayer by the day. So they're 50 plus, they're even 60 plus, and they're going to die out. And there's no evidence yet that the Gen Xers and the millennials are prepared to replace them in terms of customer value. Then further, we have a ongoing shrinkage, arguably even a collapse of the American middle class. Now, it's not all moving down. Some of it is moving up, which is good news. 2015 saw more millionaire households in the United States than in any previous year, and more growth since I think 2002 or 2003. So some are moving up, but a lot are moving down. And the middle is disappearing. Small business consolidation is occurring at an accelerated pace caused by many factors. And so in many niches that B2B info marketers work in, their number of eligible customers is actually shrinking, and it's shrinking out of the middle as well. Other economies and other nations have the exact opposite. They have a expanding middle class. They have a rising middle class. They have enormous growth in the small to barely mid-sized business, the Main Street business, the mom and pop entrepreneur business. In some of these countries, that the opportunity to do that has really only recently been unleashed. So you have markets where there is enormous growth of what either directly or indirectly supports 90% of all info marketing businesses, and therefore specifically supports all their events. And you have a market here where you actually have shrinkage of the kind of businesses that either directly or indirectly support info marketing businesses and events. So the folks who remain provincial out of preference, sloth, ignorance, fear, whatever, who try and remain provincial with their businesses, I think are in for a very difficult time in the foreseeable years, in the next handful or two of years.
Congratulations! Simply by listening to Session 1, you have taken the critical first step. If you get at least one great idea from this program, it will pay for itself over and over again. It's as simple as listening, learning, and applying these great strategies and techniques in your business in order to plan your event. On DVD number 2, Dan will reveal the reasons why people don't attend events, why it's dangerous to underestimate the difficulty in filling seats, and the key objections you must overcome to get them to invest in the experiences you offer and provide. It's critical information you need to know. Thank you for listening to this GKIC program.